Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are diving into something seriously fascinating. We're going to unpack a complete documentary plan that maps out the history and the literal construction of the Egyptian pyramids. And what makes this outline so compelling is how it takes this massive ancient mystery and turns it into a totally digestible story. Instead of just, throwing dry facts at us, this plan takes us on a very deliberate journey from pure myth straight into grounded, gritty historical reality. Honestly, it's a masterclass in how to explain a complex topic, and I absolutely can't wait to walk you through exactly how they pull it off.
Right off the bat, the documentary hooks us with the ultimate question: how in the world did they build it? The opening scenes are perfectly engineered to hit you with sheer awe. Picture this: a sweeping, majestic aerial view of the Giza Plateau. This isn't just to look pretty, it's to instantly establish the unbelievable, mind-boggling scale of these structures. And then, boom, they immediately ground that scale by zooming way in on the incomprehensible size of the individual stones used to build them. It's a brilliant psychological trick. By confronting us with the overwhelming physical reality right up front, they literally force us to ask the exact question the rest of the film promises to answer. And because that how is just so hard to wrap our heads around, the plan directly tackles the wildly different ways people have tried to explain it over the years. This is the core tension driving the whole narrative. On one side, you have the fantastical alien theory, and on the other, grounded, dirt under the fingernails archaeology. The plan puts these two totally different viewpoints head to head. It doesn't shy away from the popular myths at all. Actually, it uses the whole extraterrestrial idea as a dramatic foil to set up the real science. It's a brilliant structural choice, setting up a massive mystery for our explainer today and keeping us totally hooked as we move from wild speculation into hard evidence. So here's our game plan for today's explainer. First, we'll look at the mystery of Giza. Second, evidence from the sands. And finally, the evolution of pyramid building. Okay, starting right off with part one, the mystery of Giza, setting the stage. So this first act is really all about spectacle and scale. Remember those sweeping aerial views? That gives you the macro perspective, how these pyramids just dominate the entire landscape. But then, the focus shifts aggressively to the micro, forcing you to look at the massive size of the individual stones. And this 1-2 punch is absolutely crucial. When you look at a single stone that massive and realize, wait, literally thousands of these are stacked perfectly into a man-made mountain, well, human logic naturally short circuits. It perfectly illustrates why we're all so easily captivated by the mystery of Giza. And that exact struggle in logic brings us right to the alien theory. The source material actually leans into this. But here's the crucial point. The documentary plan acknowledges this persistent myth. Not to say it's true, but to use it as a narrative tool. By bringing up aliens right after showing those impossibly huge stones, the plan taps into our very natural reaction to something that seems impossible. It essentially says, hey, we totally get why you'd think humans couldn't pull this off. But it uses that sense of disbelief as a springboard, making the real scientific revelations that come next hit even harder. Which brings us to part two. Evidence from the sands, real archaeology. This is where the story gets incredibly real. We are introduced to a game-changing piece of archaeological evidence called the Mur Diary. This changes absolutely everything we know about how the pyramids were built. Because instead of, laser beams or levitation, we get a completely mundane logbook. And honestly, that beautifully illustrates the power of real archaeology. By focusing on an everyday diary kept by an ancient official, this monumental, almost mythical story is suddenly grounded in actual, verifiable human history. It takes the pyramids out of the realm of magic and drops them right onto the desks of ancient administrators. And from that specific diary, we get actionable intelligence. We actually get the receipts. The plan breaks it all down into clear, logical steps derived straight from the archaeology. Step 1, sourcing the stones. Step 2, transporting the stones. By walking us through these intense logistical steps, the whole building process is demystified. It proves this wasn't some sudden, unexplainable miracle. It was an incredibly massive, carefully orchestrated supply chain. Once you map out how they sourced and moved these blocks, the impossible simply becomes a series of really, really difficult engineering challenges that actual people had to solve. But hey, supply chains don't build monuments, right? People do. And that shifts the focus to the worker village, which is arguably the emotional anchor of the whole documentary. After spending all this time looking at cold, heavy stones and shipping routes, our attention is deliberately shifted to the living, breathing humans who did the heavy lifting. Shining a light on the worker village brings up their daily lives, their housing, what they ate, and the sheer exhausting human effort it all took. It turns these abstract, ancient builders into real people living in a vibrant community. And for me, that makes this historic achievement resonate on a much deeper, more emotional level.
Let's move into our final act. Part 3. Evolution of pyramids, building a masterpiece.
Now, the documentary zooms out to show us something really important. Giza was actually the result of a massive, long-term process of trial and error. We're talking centuries of architectural evolution. It started way back with the early prototype of the step pyramid. Then we get to see the actual learning curve with the bent pyramid, which is literally a giant mistake they had to correct mid-build. But learning from those earlier eras set up the finalized construction techniques they used at Giza, leading to the completion of the ultimate masterpieces. Seeing this progression proves without a doubt that these structures were the product of generations of human innovation. They literally learned from their past mistakes to reach structural perfection. Now, I know tracking centuries of architectural evolution can sometimes feel a bit dry, but the creators came up with a really smart solution, using consistent character prompts throughout these different eras. Think about how brilliant that is. It uses these characters to humanize a vastly huge timeline by giving us relatable faces to follow. From the very first step pyramid all the way to Giza's final completion, we never lose that human connection in a sea of grand architecture. It makes the passage of time and the passing down of knowledge feel totally personal and super engaging. So as this explainer wraps up its journey from wild myth down into hard evidence and through centuries of evolution, it leaves us with a really lingering thought. By systematically breaking down the greatest wonder of the ancient world, using things like the mirror diary and the trial and error of the bent pyramid, it doesn't actually diminish the magic at all. If anything, it highlights the true awe of human ingenuity. Think about it. If human beings were capable of figuring all of this out thousands of years ago, what other ancient secrets are still hiding out there in the sands? It's the kind of conclusion that leaves you desperate to learn more real history. Thanks so much for diving into this with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.